So the debate in construction, employed versus subcontractors, and there are pluses and negatives to both sides of that. And I think it depends what stage you're at in business. Like when you first start, you're generally going to have just people you know for a day rate. So technically they are a subcontractor. They just want a set day amount, you pay them, job done, end of. You've got no real commitment to them. You haven't got to have them in work full time, all that type of stuff. So I think as you get a bit bigger, you really then start wanting some employed people, like your own men on the ground, and like watching out for you as you grow. Because subcontractors, it's tough because they only really want to do their day's work and then go, because that's all they're getting paid for. So they don't really give a shit. Like they haven't really got as much sense of loyalty. But I think with subbies, you want to look at there's two types. There's exactly that. There's the one subcontractor who just wants a day rate, and they, you know, you agree that day rate, you pay them, they do a job done. Or there's a subby who's a different company. They're putting their own lads in, they're earning a margin on it, and they're a specialist or whatever they're doing, you know. And then I think that's a really good way of running the business, because when you use subbies, you've got fixed costs. Like, you know what the costs are. Someone else has looked at it. Someone else is actually taking the risk on of an element of works. They're putting their own guys in. They're organising it, and you've agreed to pay a certain figure for that, whatever job they're doing. The downside with fucking subbies is when they fuck you over and let you down, because then who deals with it? Like when a subby does something wrong, let's say you've agreed for them to do a package, it's a plumbing package, and it's a 10 grand package. They go in, they do something wrong. Your responsibility is still to the client. You've got to solve that problem. Now, I've had this a lot. It's really difficult where the subby's messed up, the client's not happy. What do? Do you then not pay the subby? You've obviously got to rectify the works, which sometimes you have to send your own guys in to rectify it, which is then at your expense. One, from the expense of sticking them on the job, but two, the expense of taking them off another job to solve the problem on that job. So you're actually getting double the headache and double the cost when you have to do that. And you still got to sort the actual shit out as well. Do you know what I mean? So it is a real tough one to get right in this industry. But I do believe the best way to run a good sized construction business, you know, doing £1 million a year, you really want the mix of a few of your own guys. So you've got people you can trust, and they're your eyes on site, and they're making sure and they're watching what subbies are doing all the time. As well as then elements of the work subbed out, so you know you've got fixed costs and you haven't got to have loads and loads of people employed as well. Because the problem is, when you employ people, you've got a responsibility to keep them in work all the time, and that's quite tough and challenging. If you've got a mix of staff, let's say you've got 20 lads all employed, and then jobs move around, you're paying those guys anyway, so it gets a lot more complicated. You've got to keep them in work, and sometimes what you can end up doing, because they're employed, you end up sticking them on jobs that they're not really needed or necessary, but you're sticking them there to keep them doing something, and then it just becomes a bit of a shit sandwich, because the jobs are actually earning less money. Like, they're eating into your profit. If you've not allowed for someone to be on a job and you're sending them there because you've got nowhere else to send them, that's just eating your money, your profit as the owner. So it's a real hard mix to get. So where we got to work really well was your site manager, or your sort of working foreman person is the employed person. So they know the standards that we operate at, what level of detail that we expect, you know, working conditions, keeping the site nice and clean and tidy, making sure that everyone's signed in, the health and safety stuff, they've signed the RAMs, all different bits like that. You need a guy that's on your books that's responsible for that stuff. But then they're then partly responsible for managing the subcontractors. And obviously, once you do find good subbies in this industry, you reuse them and use them and use them again. Like, it's the same people over and over again. So you do get there, but sometimes you have to go through a few of the wrong subbies to get to that point. And that is the challenge of construction. But I think that the blended view is a really good way of running a business, and it allows you to keep decent control of it as well when you've got that. Because then what happens is, when you find the right subbies, they become a bit more reliant on you as well, because you're giving them 80-90% of all their workload. Although they're a subcontractor, you know, if they didn't work with you, they'd be out of business, or they'd have to go and fucking find a lot more work to fill their pipeline and all their stuff they've got going on. So once you find the right ones, it works really well. But common question that gets asked me all the time is, like, if you were starting again, what would you do? I would lean heavily into subcontractors. I really would. Like, if I was pricing jobs, I'd be getting prices off all different subbies for all different elements of the works, but verifying them first. Like, you really need to know that subby well, and this is the art of it. Is there's subbies and there's subbies, and there's subbies that are good, there's subbies that are bad, but then there's subbies that are cheap and there's subbies that are expensive. So from the point of view of making money, trying to stick a margin on, sometimes you can choose the wrong subby that's too expensive, then you put your profit on, then you end up losing the job because you're just too expensive. So it is, again, fucking hard of finding the right guys, but for the right money as well, that you can still earn a profit on, because otherwise, what's the point? It's pointless subbing all the work out and you're barely making any money. But the flip side is, once you've got the right subbies and the management is low, then that's the debate of going, well, actually, I'll earn less margin on that job as a whole because the management's like minimal. Whereas where it goes all wrong is if you've got subbies that need their hand holding all the time, they're expensive, and you've got to manage the fuck out of it all the time. You've got to check on what they're doing, or, you know, making sure they're doing things right. So your management costs just go up through the roof. So that is the art, finding the right guys. The thing with employees, it's not just their set salary, it's everything else. It's things like national insurance, pension contributions, holiday allowances, vehicles, phones, them phoning in sick. You know, it's all that type of stuff, and it's difficult. It really is difficult, especially in construction as well, because it's a difficult group of people. Like, tradesmen are difficult to work with a lot of the time. But the key with either of them, whether they're employed or they're subcontractors, is looking after your guys. When you do find the right ones who don't take the piss, you've got to look after them. Like, you've got to treat them. It's so important. You know, labour is everything in any trade you do. Like, it's part of it's winning the work, but the second part is actually the people that are doing it, because they're the representation of you. Like, whether it's a subcontractor or it's an employee, they're representing you. And if you mess up one job in this game, that's it. Reputation is just shot. So it's got to be protected at all costs. Got the old Bill behind us. I don't know what he's doing. Of course, another problem with subbies is when they look at a job, they price it, you then win the job, you start it, but then the subcontractors miss something. So then you can have the issue of the subbies coming to you and going, I need extra for this, but it's not something that you can genuinely go to the client and charge them for because everyone's missed it. That can be the real kick in the balls, and that really is the difficulty of, like, when you are using subbies, you need to know, like, what they're doing as well. Like, you need to properly look at the job yourself as well, because you can fuck it. You know, if someone's giving you a price and then they get started and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about this, it becomes your problem, because you can't go to the client if it's someone that's, like, you know, not a genuine extra. If it's just a genuine thing where the subbies misworked the job or can't do it, or not quantified it properly, or whatever, just missed something out and just fucked it up, that's when the problem then becomes yours as the main contractor, as you like the person running it. You can't go to the client because you look stupid, so it's like, who swallows that cost? And in a blunt, straightforward, direct way, the subcontractors should do. But then what can happen is they can just fuck off and leave site if you haven't got all your like ducks in a row of like you've issued a contract to them, there's a scope of works, everything's agreed. If it's all done on handshakes, it can become a bit like loose and fuzzy, and it's like, well, I can't finish that job, this is what the subcontractor says, I can't do it for that because I've messed this up, and he goes, well, I'm not finishing the job. But then where does that leave you? So what do? Do you pay the subby and take the hit, or what? You have to negotiate, and this is all stuff that's like hitting your profit. It's killing her. It's an absolute killer when it happens, and it's not good. And that's the thing that we found, is that when you find the right subbies, you still have to issue an order that says you are doing this job. It's got their quote that they gave you on it, a little bit of blurb about extras, variations and all that, and say that they agree, they've looked at the job, they understand the job as a whole, and you're just getting all that sort of stuff cleared out, so you've got something to stand back on. Because when you haven't got anything to stand back on, it's just he said, she said, and it's like, well, who's going to argue the toss, and who's going to take the loss in the end? But anyway, I think in the balance, the blend of having 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of your own guys who are like the lead, the front man on each job, whether that's a working foreman, a site manager, that is your guy who deals with the day-to-day shit, and then the rest of everyone else is all subcontract labour. I think that works really well. You've got nice little packages. Your working foreman could be your man in charge, but also doing a bit as well and actually earning his money by doing parts and elements of the works, such as the labour. And I think that just works really well, and that's the thing that we found that was the best way of getting it, trying to tick all the boxes in one, but still trying to run a nice, decent company that makes a decent margin. So that's that one. I'll see you on the next one.